In the course of my training, I'm finding out that people just tend not to use lofting as much as I really think they should be using lofting. There's a lot of advantages to, even if there may be other methods of building objects, there's a lot of advantages to lofting that are going to give you editability in the long run, going to give you the ability to control density of your mesh in the long run. And then there are certain material attributes that are very, very handy in the lofting process. However, what I find is that people will they'll loft a circle along a line that works just fine. And then they try to go a little bit beyond that, where the shape is a little different than a circle. And they start running into this various string of stumbling blocks. And what we're going to do is get over those stumbling blocks and make you aware of what they are and how you can work around them. By the way, I'm from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, so when I say I mean R. So if you need a translation, I can help you out with that. I'm going to start. This is probably one of the only sessions at SIGGRAPH where I'm not going to be doing any smoke and mirrors. This is going to be the raw stuff. I just don't want to fake you out with things and show you things that look easy to do, but when you get back to try to do them, they don't work. So I'm going to keep things very, very simple so that you can focus on the process of what's going on. And like I say, I'm going to start showing you the stumbling blocks that we run into. Now, the terminology, you got two pieces of 2D information as an absolute minimum to be able to do any lofting. And the terms you have to know, because they're used all through documentation and outside books. Path and shape. Path, of course, is the extrusion path. Shape is the cross-section shape. I'm going to start out, and I'm going to create, as a starting path, I'm just going to create a straight line. Now, there's something odd about that line that you haven't seen me do it, because you can't see what I'm doing exactly up here. But this is the first stumbling block that people tend to run into with lofting that really makes them throw their hands up and say, oh, it doesn't work, I'm not going to use it, it's too confusing. So I just introduced something, I hope. You know, anytime you try to do something wrong, it's always difficult to do it. It only happens when you're in a hurry. I'm going to create another shape that is going to be my circle. Now notice that I created the shapes in different viewports. That's going to be important because we're going to have to understand local reference coordinate systems to make sense out of how lofting works. So I purposely drew this line in the front viewport. That puts its local reference coordinate system with the z-axis pointing straight out at us. Right? That's very important. The circle I drew in the top viewport, of course, the z-axis points straight out from it as well. So they're different local reference coordinate systems. And that's going to show itself throughout this process. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to select this line that I'm going to use as the path and get into the well-hidden lofting command. Got to go all the way down into compound objects, of course. And we're going to do a get shape. It really doesn't matter which way we do this. I can choose the object that I want to remain stationary, and then I can either choose a get shape or get path. Well, I want to leave my path stationary, so I'm going to do a get shape. Also notice that there is an option here called instance. That's going to be important to us later on. And I'm going to come over and loft the circle along the line. Wow. Pretty amazing stuff, huh? Well, what's wrong with it? Can you see anything right off the bat that something is drastically wrong? Yeah, the section, there are different spacings between the sections coming vertically up the path. Those are called path steps. And where that will really manifest itself is that if I want to put another shape on, and again, I'm a little ahead of myself here, we're going to come back to this, but if I go to 50% of the way along the path, my pivot is 50% of the way along the object. But look, here's where that yellow tick went, way up here. That is being seen as 50% along the path. Doesn't make any sense. People give up at this point. Lofting doesn't work. The problem is, when I drew that line, I held my mouse button down and dragged upward to the second vertex point and then picked. And what that did was that introduced curvature in that first vertex. This happens all the time. It's very difficult when you're not comfortable with creating Bezier splines. It's very difficult to avoid that somewhere in your loft path. And I did that on purpose to introduce this initial problem. What I have to do to fix that is I have to go back to the path itself. So I select that path that I have in there. You can see that I've got, let me go to my modify panel, and you can see that I have that line 01 selected. Not sure what graphics card this is, but everything goes black on those other three viewports. That's all right. We don't need that. Here's my first indication that there's a problem. You can see over here. Do you see this white line down here? Anybody know what that is? That's the bounding box of the spline itself. Why is it way down there? The spline only goes from here to here. But here's my bounding box down here. Well, if I go to vertex subobject level and I drag a selection window, there's a Bezier handle indicating that there is curvature. But because I dragged straight up, that curvature is in a line, so we don't see the curvature, but it is there, and it's very distinct. Very distinct. If I zoom in on this object again and right-click on the vertex and change that to a corner vertex type, now my segmentation should be quite even. Let me get out of subobject mode. Now, 50% of the way along the path is 50% of the way along the lofted object. So there's the first hurdle that you'll run into, is inadvertent Bezier information in your vertices of your path. So watch out for that stuff. That's an absolute killer. Sometimes it can be less obvious than that, but really cause problems when you start to get into more complex lofting.